Good evening. Welcome. This is the After Hours Show. I'm Joe in Norway. I'm joined by Ann Lee. Hey, Ann.
Hey there.
Hey, Ann's a retired college professor and community member at the Daily Kos. She's a member of the National Council of Independent Scholars and is a contributor to the book, The Political Economy of Art, Making the Nation of Culture. Evening. How things going?
Interesting week, Disasters began at the beginning of the week, stuff like that. Interesting. We got to the weekend. Happy Easter for those who practice it.
I've been out of the loop. I'm stuck out at the farm here. I'm gonna go all trad tonight, but I'll let you catch us up on the news of the world while I dusted off our talk here. I was out in the wilds of Norway, and I thought I might do something a little more trad tonight and change things up well with the programming.
Okie doke.
I thought I might do a slideshow.
All right.
We all like slideshows, don't we?
Especially with that 6-point type.
Around here. Earlier this week, I showed a documentary and I felt guilty. I was about to show it without a slideshow. It's almost like a prerequisite. And I felt so guilty that I was compelled to make a slideshow. And then I got to the weekend here and I was like, oh, that was fun. I think I'll make another one. We'll just do something really quick before I get to cooking.
Okie doke.
So welcome. This is the Autonomous Collective. We do a little cooking, live cooking, all vegetarian, and Anne regales us with political events and things going on in the world that we should be aware of. And we do this all weekend. Well, we do it all week, but we have lots of programming throughout the weekend, starting with the after hour. Starting with the after hour show. So I'm out at the farm in the mountains. I thought I'd do something more traditional tonight. I was standing out at the fjord, looking at the vista, thinking, God damn, I'm cold. But aside from that, I was thinking, what did they eat back in the day? One of the main foods back in the day was a norsk flatbread, or Norwegian flatbread. The Jews call it matzah. Many people have this bread, essentially a cracker, unleavened bread. It's very popular everywhere, basically. But it has deep roots in Norwegian history, going back who knows how long, but the earliest written record is mid 1500s. But it became the common everyday bread of the Middle Ages. So as opposed to leavened bread, the term bread in Norwegian brød meant flatbread. And it's basically dried discs of some kind of ground grain that have been cooked on a stone or over flame. But the main ingredients are traditionally they were barley, with the primary grain due to the location of Norway up on the planet. But it could be a mixture of barley, oats, rye, and later on they used wheat. But typically they were made of rye. Tonight, because we're all trad, even though Norway is a largely atheistic country, I believe. Not so much as Sweden, but fairly. They are still heavily Christian-based culture. And when it's Easter, for days, there's no shops open or anything. And we got out to the farm, and I only had rye flour. So tonight it's just rye. Maybe I'll sprinkle in some seeds. We'll see. But traditionally it's barley, but we'll be using rye. But traditionally it was baked over stone slabs or logs. This is from the Mørdrumsdal Museum from mid 1980s. They're all going trad. So they're cooking over on a metal disc over flame, and a woman behind is rolling out the flatbread behind her. But the characteristic of this type of bread is that it can be stored easily and kept for months, 12, 24, sometime longer. As long as you have a dry container, they could last quite a while. So they're very practical, as opposed to leavened bread, which can go moldy quite fast. And it's easy to make with a flatbread. And you traditionally roll it out with the chelva. You have different types. You have smooth ones, and then you have this one with the perforations to give the little signature dimples. This is my first time making it, so it's all going to be experimental for me. And one of the things I could not find was Grandma's Duke, the little kind of wax fabric that you're supposed to put underneath it to prevent sticking. So I did find an old plastic, what do you call them? Tablecloth. So if I have to, I'll use that. I'll switch that real quick. So you might see me stressing and scrambling in the middle here. So you might have had flatbread before. For example, this in the 19th or 20th century, the brands like Vasa started marketing these and mass producing. It's kind of it's one of the most popular things to eat. If it's not on leavened bread, then it's on flatbread. So where I am in the west, the coastal western region, it was usually baked from oat flour, and on the eastern side of the mountains, you had pea flour, which is quite unique. One feature of the flatbread culture is youth, and particularly female youth. It was a kind of a requirement for young girls. It wasn't kind of, it actually was a requirement for young women to learn how to bake flatbread before they were married.
Mm.
And the whole process was a kind of communal or social activity with neighbors and extended family, even professional bakers getting together and doing baking sessions. We could knock out whole batches at a time and store them. It's hugely popular with all the different holidays. During Christmas, one of the ways to serve flatbread is with a kind of a cream cheese with salmon, or even better, rockfish, which is a rotten fish that's been thrown in the ground for 9 months and then served at wintertime. And the oldest person is traditionally the one that tests it out. And if they don't die, then everybody can have it. And you get a lot of different variations from fjord to fjord and region to region. You can use seeds, you can use different flours and things like that. And this is typically what they look like, the traditional one. So let's get going. Just a reminder, you can join us at the autonomouscollective.net and be able to see the weekly schedule and the link to join the Discord and sign up for the newsletter, which gives you the Zoom link.
Yeah, we need a lot more people to bring stuff. Bring new ideas.
Yeah, so the main thing we do here, I have 500 grams. Let's see, it's 13 deciliters of water to 2 kilos of flour. So I got to get this right now. I'm halving it. Basically, we boil water and we mix it with flour and salt. And then you leave that to sit for half a day or so, or overnight. You can do a mixture of water and sour milk. That's another version, but we're doing vegetarian. I have, by the magic of cooking shows, I've already got the dough ready to roll out. So we've got one batch here. I'll whip up this and then we'll start rolling that out. So
cool.
I'm really missed out on what's been going on, but I heard that there was some commotion this week.
Oh, well, big ship collision with some assorted, very bizarre conspiracy theories related to the ship collision.
Already?
Oh, yeah. Is it as though all the shibboleths of the GOP came out, whether it was diversity, immigrants, the people who died were workers, immigrants, doing jobs that nobody else will do, filling potholes early in the morning on the roadway, and
diversity, inclusion, and
yeah, all that stuff. Let's see what else. It's a Singaporean ship, so therefore that was all, suspect in some ways. Ship was going to Sri Lanka, I think, and it's not that big a ship actually, considering the overall size of a lot of container ships. So all of those were really irrelevant, considering that it was a power failure. It's just really hard to stop a very large ship moving along at about 8 knots. And
so it was arriving or leaving?
Leaving.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was an arrival.
No, it's trying to get out of the port, and it's going to cost anywhere from $800 million to $2 billion to replace that bridge. It's going to take a while. And they were trying to blame,
and the port is completely shut down now to all.
Pretty much, but the discussion today was about alternatives, and a lot of shipping is going to go out from other places, Norfolk, whatever. There's plenty of other places to utilize. In fact, it was just easier relative to Baltimore because it's a little more centrally located. But I think it's not going to mess up the supply chain. Let's put it that way. It's not going to be that bad. The big
toilet paper won't run out.
No, I don't think so.
Get your bidets, people. Get your bidets.
They already have cranes out trying to pull some of the bridge out, and the reality, of course, is that the bridge was a pretty old bridge and probably should have been replaced anyway, relative to American infrastructure. I don't think personally, I don't think it was well designed when you consider, I mean, I've driven on that bridge, and it doesn't seem to be well designed, just in terms of that you have to go up this really steep slope in order to get up. I mean, I think the approach to the bridge is a little radical, and stuff like that, whatever.
I would assume a truss design that collapses if a main support gets taken out is maybe not the most practical design to have, especially as it spans the whole entrance to the port.
Well, it's common to the period. I assume what they'll put in is probably some much more fancy suspension bridge, kind of like the one in Boston, because that relative design with cables, etc., suspension seems to be a de rigueur. Also, because you don't have to use as much steel. It can be made with a lot more concrete. I assume that its replacement will be a concrete one, a more concrete one, like most of the European bridges of that kind of long spans. But that's just a guess. Anyway, that's what happened in Ukraine. Let's see, the Russians shot down one of their own fighter planes yesterday. They did other stupid things, and many stupid things have been happening. There's some sort of agitation going on in Poland, and it's unclear what that's happening. Little agitation in the Baltic states. The Russians are just being Russians. They tried at the beginning of the week to accuse everybody under the sun, and including the Ukrainians, for causing the or planning the terrorist attack on the Crocus City Theater. And the reality, of course, was that these were guys from Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan? Anyway, one of the stands. And it clearly was about ISIS or ISIS-K, a subgroup going back. It goes back, I think, leads back essentially to Afghanistan. And they caught the guys who the perpetrators. They tortured them, and the Russians were pretty brutal about it too, showing they cut off one guy's ear. They didn't show how they were beating up all those other guys, but they were pretty well roughed up by the time they got to court. So there was a certain amount of barbarism in that. And aside from trying to blame Ukraine, the Ukrainians, of course, were doing what Ukrainians are trying to do, is save their country. There were still more attacks on various things. This week has been filled with more interesting pieces of information, full maps of Russian air bases and some of the refineries. They did manage at the beginning of the week to damage, not sink, but I think seriously damage two more ships of the Black Sea Fleet, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, with the usual kind of missile attacks. And so that was sort of interesting. Putin spent most of his time rattling sabers relative to the Crocus City domestic terror attack, and a fair number of people died. It's really unfortunate, and I frankly think that, considering how many emergency services that they didn't save enough people or whatever, I think that there's certain weirdness about how the event was handled. I think we won't really know very much about that, considering the way they deal with information. But that it was just interesting in that particular sense. Noting, of course, that the theater itself was in a slightly more suburban area of of Moscow, and so that was one thing in there. The usual matters continued. The Ukrainians are being trained in flying F-16s. The first classes have been graduated. This week, I think it was the first group that had never flown a Russian jet, whereas most Ukrainian pilots who had been trained before had been flying the post-Soviet Russian jets like the Sukhoi and MiGs. So there's a new generation, I would say, of Ukrainian pilots being trained. That was sort of interesting. Other than that, there is the usual conflict across the battle lines. Just all the usual things. A single piloted drones killing people in their trenches. It's just the same kind of awfulness of war occurring. I think they blew up a couple more Abrams U.S. supplied Abrams tanks, which is sort of interesting. Not really. They just happened to be in the battle area and they got hit. And there's really no conclusion that you can make from that. Recently, there is some discussion that the Swedes may offer their Gripen or Gripen fighters to the Ukrainians, which will be good because not only do they have a wide variety of ordnance that they can use, but it's the kind of airplane that is designed for Sweden. That is, you don't have a lot of air bases, so you start using roadways as your runways. So, and quite a durable plane. It's flown by a lot of air forces, mainly smaller countries that can't afford, really super sophisticated jets. But these are actually quite advanced. Similar avionics as American jets, and so they're really quite good. So that's the other thing that's going on. Well, let's see, they're the usual kinds of border conflicts. I think there's some resolution with the Poles and the issue of blocking the borders. There's a whole thing about grain going back and forth that seems to be a problem, and some of it has to do with pro-Russian groups. There are pro-Russian groups all over Europe, so that they're And because the Russians have because they like disrupting things, it's a kind of sort of a piece of national policy and hybrid warfare to be able to forge for a former communist country to forge syncretic connections to right-wing groups in a whole variety of countries. So there's a lot of that agitation going on. And of course, they're playing off of some of the other issues that the United States, which today, it's bad PR, and they should have delayed it a couple of days considering the election campaign. But I think they signed off on, Pentagon signed off on more weapons transfers to the Israelis. I just don't even, it's just, it's just incredible. There are protests. There's going to be more protests this weekend. There were protests against the three Democratic presidents who had a fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall, raised $26 million, which is pretty significant. I assume they'll be able to show some of it subsequently, but it was relatively successful, and they all looked very cheery. And Stephen Colbert was one of the hosts, I think, and it had Lizzo and a bunch of other folks in terms of entertainment. So it was interesting. It's been an interesting week in that particular context, even though Donald Trump has gone wacko and has decided that because there's no gag order, the gag order on him in the latest trial, the hush money trial, doesn't include the judge or his family. Trump made up a bunch of stories and started attacking both him and his daughter, who I think does work for the some Democratic Party things. So that's happening.
Before you go on, I'm done mixing the dough.
So please go ahead.
We've got it about at that consistency. This is the one that's finished. So you can see a little bit of. If you leave it for several hours, it'll begin to aerate, or the moisture will be able to penetrate through all the flour. So I'll just leave this for tomorrow. Again, if you want, you can add different seeds to it, like sesame. Sesame seeds are popular, chia, whatnot. Linfro, not linfro. I always forget the name of it. Linseed.
And so you'll proof that in the fridge, or
just cover it and leave it overnight.
Okay.
Put a plastic over it.
Cling film, they call it.
Nice. And then we'll start to roll this out. We'll roll it into a log and then cut it into discs. And then get to rolling.
Nice.
Test it out. It's supposed to be about 100, I believe 120 grams or so. I'm feeling we're going to be a little sticky here. Figure it out.
You throw down some flour of some kind?
Yeah, I need to wash it first, and then. Yeah. So I didn't quite follow the Trump thing there with the family.
Trump's just going nuts. He's sort of spending more time at Mar-a-Lago, just doing stupid things like he does. He crashes weddings and other kinds of things. He purportedly won his club championship at Doral. Needless to say, he cheats at golf. So, the, it's really
It
well, there was an image.
sounds like he's got his own Catskills circuit going on down there he's the only
Oh yeah,
performer.
yeah. He just goes down and he likes crashing weddings, and it's sort of he's like a greeter at Walmart or something. It's pretty weird. Um, uh, there's been pictures of just him with a wedding party, other people just coming up to him, and crazy looking people coming up to him and wanting pictures taken with him. So there are some of those floating around the internet. So the golf stuff happened. The trial has begun, but he hasn't really been in court. And then there's been the background against which this is happening. That is, the Georgia trial is proceeding. I think there's going to be a decision, at least in this one case, that perhaps we'll have a decision by August. So we'll see whether he gets, whether it goes to the clink or not, or whether it'll just happen with or at least there'll be some kind of conviction, and obviously an appeal. He just really loves doing those appeal things. The other things that have been going on are much more scary. A law from 1873 has attracted the attention of the conservatives on the Supreme Court. It's a law called the Comstock Act, which is a anti-pornography act from 1873. It's never taken off the books, so it sort of sat there lingering. It's been, overturned by a variety of other things relative to contraceptive policy, but it appears that they may try to rationalize the control of abortion medicine by claiming that it is somehow in violation of the Comstock Act. And it's a long slog, and just because they have a majority, they might get away with it. We'll see. But the odds are it won't happen, but the noise they're making about it will certainly satisfy all of these anti-abortion folks. It is problematic because it's a vague law that can be applied to nearly anything that goes through the mail. So it is about this question of transportation, not so much of the thing itself, but crossing state lines and stuff like that, which there's still amazing little elements of American law that are problematic relative to a democracy, but that's a whole nother story, I suppose. So anyway, Ukraine continues. The money hasn't been allocated on the U.S. side. It may occur after Congress comes back from their vacation. Other European countries have filled in in terms of finding ammunition and providing ammunition. So a lot of that's getting transported. Money is being transferred. The French are sending 70 more César, I think 70 more César. They're 220 millimeter guns. They're very long distance guns. They fire a projectile somewhere around 31 kilometers, I think. They have a better range than Russian guns, in fact. What's that thing?
I've forgotten the name of it in Norwegian. This is used to pick up the.
I see.
They do a technique where they kind of slip it over without. There we go.
You need to tilt the camera up a little bit.
Okay.
There we go. Yes, nice.
Steam's coming off of it. Good. Not quite as round as I was hoping for. We got it looks more like a loaf of bread, a slice of a loaf of bread. about
Yum,
the right size.
yum, yum. I also have a sort of a rant this week that
Ooh,
involves whether it's a change in view of the genocidal campaign in Palestine's Land Day is coming up, and it's unfortunate that
oh yeah.
the Israeli forces have destroyed roughly 40% of Gaza's agricultural land. And it's, as some folks have called it, it's ecocide that is occurring
Mm.
in Gaza. Um, just incredibly and intolerably problematic. And what with signing off on transferring arms, they could have, delayed that for a month. I would have, just to
What's the
force
rush?
Netanyahu to, stop. He's still going to invade Rafah, as far as I can tell. There have been a
Mm.
lot of discussions, and it's still, you know, not making him very many friends, and Biden is getting a lot of pushback on in the United States context. Their little thing at a Radio City Music Hall was disrupted by hecklers and
Uh-huh.
folks, so it's not like it was a perfect little event. So stuff's happening. There were protests outside. I don't recall whether anyone was arrested or not, but there were a police presence and people protesting fairly significantly. There is a
Mm.
particular change in the views of, there is some sort of movement in terms of approval and disapproval of military action that Israel took in Gaza. Slight decreases for Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. There's greater disapproval of it now in pretty
Mm.
much every quarter, even though a lot more Republicans were in favor, like 71%. Currently, 64% of Republicans are in favor of military action by the Israelis, whereas 18% of Democrats are. Independents are somewhere
Mm.
in the middle with 29%. So that'll give you a sense of it's trending downward. And another U.S. State Department official resigned in protest. There's the second one who's protested in terms of Israel Gaza policy.
Mm.
Um, my I don't know if I want to start my rant. Do you need to?
Well,
That first one looks like it's done,
almost
right?
done. First one's almost done.
Nice.
Goes quickly.
Rant wise, in the American financial sector, Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He could have gotten 110 years. It's likely he won't serve the entire 25, but still a significant amount of time. He sort of whined that his useful life was over. Whatever.
What does
He
that mean?
will be 57 years old when he gets out of prison.
Ah,
So
that'll
that's one thing. Yes.
that'll be less of a danger or something.
Well, he's not alone. He certainly his own minions at FTX are still up for. I mean, even though they all flipped on him, I think there's a bunch of them are going to get a couple years in jail. So more people are going to go to jail. I don't think it discredits Bitcoin necessarily, but it certainly puts a crimp in some people's perception of cryptocurrency. I think it could be said, though, that it's happening at the same time when Donald Trump's media company, the Trump Media and Technology Group, which was advanced as a special kind of investment, a SPAC investment.
Sounds great name.
Paid made big money. At least on paper. Now that's the whole thing, is that it doesn't reflect really what the stock is worth. So it is what is called a meme stock, which is like during the pandemic, there were several things like GameStop and a bunch of other stocks that had a lot of buzz, had a lot of sizzle, a lot of people yakking about it. But the reality was that ultimately there was some sort of necessary sort of representation or material worth that was needed to be there, not just all this blather about it. But it is, some people might refer to it as a sucker bet. And, some people who are more familiar and better at this stock market stuff, these kind of meme stocks and stuff are problematic because only not very smart people will invest in these things.
That was my other life.
Some will refer to them as a pump and dump operation, where a lot of people will sort of move money into it and will short it or do other things and bail out quickly, leaving a lot of investors holding the bag. For Trump, it creates a little bit of flexibility in terms of the money, because the cap on this stock is what, 15 billion, and Trump's net worth has reportedly gone up to $8 billion, but that's all in paper. That doesn't say anything about the cash that he has available or anything else. But for those less familiar with it, people are going to be impressed by this. Since numerically speaking, Trump has now re-entered the list of the 500 wealthiest people on the planet. But as you know from Trump's own activity, that it's all kind of vaporware. A lot of it just is in debt, is in the form of debt. It's quite weary for us all. But I think there will be some people will buy Truth Social stock, and there's an article that comes out that is talking about apolitical risk takers. That is, people who are going to ride this sort of wave, or true believers, people retirees who don't have college degrees, but have some money to kill. And that's kind of what will happen. So we'll see whether
patriotic duty.
Oh yeah, well, they see this as their chance to get rich and support whatever their ideological, some guy they have an ideological affinity to, because he's not like the black guy who preceded him. There's a whole reactionary kind of thing going on. So that's one thing. Now, whether he comes up with the 175 million bond that's up for this next week, we'll see. That's another issue. That was the other news this week, of producing the 454 bond, a $4 million bond, to cover the judgment that was against him in the fraud trial. They lowered it to 175 million, and it's not. I mean, on the one hand, it's just like it's sort of the old boys system of capitalism. On the other hand, his company's not really that big, and it's not, well, it's not so much that he's a first-time offender, but that it's not like a Trump's little company is a little company. It's a family company rather than something much more larger and globally substantial, whereas Trump only pretends to be that. So some people are predicting bankruptcy is still down the road. The stock itself, by the time we get to 6 months from now or whatever, around the election time, the stock may not be worth anything. Might be worth $2 rather than 40,000 or something. It's just screwy. So there's big money being played with, and a lot of names that are being associated with this. The people who are board members of this Truth Social include, former White House, Trump administration officials like Kash Patel, who, well, anyway, that's a whole nother story. Linda McMahon, who's, what's his name, McMahon's wife, um, Devin Nunes, who's in charge of the little Trump media group, all of these kinds of things. But if they give him a waiver, which means that he could, he's supposed to wait 6 months before selling this kind of his stock, since he's a majority holder. Should Trump get a waiver from this board, company rules will allow him to sell several $100 million worth of stock over a 3-month period. So, this is it could cause a whole bunch of trouble, and it'll wipe out the holdings of a lot of people who bought shares because they believe, in Trump. So anyway, so this is going to be a pretty much predictive. This guy, Timothy Noah, wrote an article in the New Republic, which is a good analysis of this. And he closes it with the New Yorker cartoon. It's two sheep are talking to each other in the meadow, and they're looking at a billboard with a wolf on it. And on the billboard, the wolf is it's imprinted, "I am going to eat you." And the two sheep are speaking to each other, and one says, he tells it like it is. And that's pretty much what's happening for anyone who invests in Trump's Truth Social stock. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to yammer about is because it's a Good Friday, and I didn't realize it was always the same guy who was nailing himself to a cross. There's a Filipino who has, for 35 years, has been actually nailing himself. That is, with a real nail through the palms to a cross. And
method.
He's really into this. I just didn't realize it was the same guy every year. I mean, I knew that someone in the Philippines was always nailing themselves, that people nailed themselves to crosses in the Philippines. But, this guy had a miraculous thing. He fell off a building and wasn't harmed, which, it seems pretty miraculous. So that influences his deal there. But he's 63 years old now. And, he's getting a little long in the tooth. And he wasn't the only guy to do it. At least in this particular instance, 10 other people got nailed themselves to crosses in the Pampanga province, which is north of Manila. It did stop during COVID, so that's okay, I guess. And this one fellow, Ruben Anaje, a 63-year-old carpenter, needless to say.
Go figure.
It's a bit of penitence, but I'm not going to deny him his miracle. In the 1980s, Anaje survived nearly unscathed when he accidentally fell from a 3-story building, prompting him to undergo the crucifixion as thanksgiving for what he considered a miracle. He extended the ritual after loved ones recovered from serious illnesses, one after another, and he landed more carpentry and sign painting job contracts. So it was promotional in that sense. Anyway, he says, because my body is getting weaker, I can't tell if there will be a next one or this is really the final time. I guess Christ said that too. Anyway, we'll know in 3 days.
Now,
So
do
that's
the holes seal up, or are they? Is he doing it in a different location? Does he have several
I don't
wounds?
know. I have no idea. I just find it amazing that people want to do performative art like that. But I think that it is within a kind of pre-modern tradition to do exactly those kinds of things of scarification or some sort of bodily, torture of some kind to demonstrate faith, which is, that's very important for some folks. So anyway, that's my Good Friday message. I usually, I think if I wanted to be nailed up there, probably I'd go with the 4 nails rather than 3 nails, but that's just me. Anyway, so.
And a little stickage.
Stickage.
Not quite as round as.
Aha. Still going to be crispy though, right?
Yep. Well, we hope so. I might not be getting it thin enough. That's my concern here. Try one more.
But you could buy these in the stack from bakeries, right?
Yeah, well, yes, but there's not that many. So typically you'll find them in a grocery store in a paper packaging.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually folded up into a square about so big.
Uh-huh.
They're becoming more and more popular. Typically, people just do it at home.
Yeah.
All right. That's a little bit nervous. Got some wrinkles here. Sticky.
But it looks like you had some air bubbles, right?
Uh, yeah, it does pop up. So that's why I was thinking it's too thick, but it'll dry out.
So that's sort of the end of my little ranting. I mean, there's plenty to rant about. I would assert to you that in the case of Bankman-Fried, it's pretty much the close of that little chapter for a whole bunch of folks. But it doesn't stop. I mean, I suppose it's a cautionary tale for Silicon
Oh,
Valley, venture capitalists. But one should be careful when you sort of build an entire ideology behind being a. I mean, what he presented himself as was a kind of good capitalist that you could do good things
but
if you only
are
had
there
enough
others
money.
to be tried after him?
Um, well, his
Or
colleagues, his sort of ex-girlfriend, who I think is Larry Ellison's daughter, and two other guys, I think were both engineers, who had been part of this whole thing. Uh, with respect, I think Bankman-Fried just overstepped his bounds. He just spent a lot of stuff and got into a hole, and someone decided to call in their chips, and that's essentially what caught him short. Had he been more liquid, had he been able to pull up $8 billion, I think it would have been okay. But that's the nature of the activity. In future weeks, I think we're going to look at some other of this kind of activity. It doesn't stop people who have lots of extra money to do crazy things, right? Ellison, is it Ellison or Zuckerberg? They have bunkers, right? Well, they both have bunkers, I think.
imagine.
One guy they have islands and bunkers and places to flee.
I
In
think I got
case.
this one much thinner than the others.
Okay.
Oh, oh no! Oh no! I'm screwing it up. Oh,
There we go. You were saying
look up a sweat.
that's a pretty old device you have there. That's like what, 40,
This is
50 years old?
this is probably from 1940.
Cool.
Meteor
Meteor.
from Oslo. Look at that logo. Beauty. They don't make them. They still make these. A little bit, maybe not the same quality. But yeah, it's very nice. Crispy.
So how do these go with the meal? You don't
So,
put butter on these things, do you?
you can do, yeah, people do. You can put butter, serve it with soup or smoked salmon, cream cheese, slice of cheese with cucumber, hummus, whatever you like.
Mm.
Not sure if you're supposed to crack those or not.
Let me mention that the Belly Box is tomorrow afternoon.
Oh yeah.
We'll have a little open reading thing tomorrow afternoon, if I recall. Later tonight is in about 30 minutes is Twilight Zone. John, would you like to preview that? And Harsh will be doing another episode of the history of India. If you guys are here, can you talk a little bit about what's coming up?
Sure. So tonight is a fourth season episode of the Twilight Zone. It is called The Incredible World of Horace Ford. It stars Pat Hingle and Nan Martin, and is interesting.
Okay.
Now these fourth season, these are the longer ones.
Yeah, these are
Hour-long
the
ones?
hour-long episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Harsh.
And Harsh has
Sure. So yeah, mine would be Discovery of India actually. So this would be part 2 of Ramayana, the ending. And this would have birds fighting with demons, and it will have monkeys fighting with demons, and gods fighting with demons, and demons being
Hey.
killed. Yep. But
Poor
everything
demons.
would be shown in like a different art form. So you'll see a form of mime as well, actually.
Mm,
Yeah, that would be interesting. So stick around.
all righty. All things good. Weekly marks will continue. I think we're up to lecture 10 on volume 1 of Capital. And there will be Columbo on a Sunday afternoon. So we also have a session where before weekly marks earlier on Sunday afternoon, where hopefully Hammer and Sickle will come back. Although needless to say, as the weather gets better, most of us are going to be actually going out and doing Hammer and Sickle like things. So, but in the rest of the week, there will be a writing on Monday, game time. If you were there this past Monday, I yammered on for about 30 minutes on March Madness. I will not do that again. But
it's a miracle, and it's a miracle. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I see Jesus in my flatbread.
Oh yeah, well, it doesn't
I
look
got
like
the beard and
that looked like Jesus.
little bit.
I see
I don't know,
Hipnoto.
looks more like a dolphin to me. But anyway.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Stick around. The evening shall continue.
Indeed. And thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to do our little outro now, and see you next week.